In this video I will briefly comment on the logic of the concept by Hegel and the chapter 4 of the doctrine of awakening by Julius Evola, destruction of the demon of dialectics. But before watching this video, I recommend that you should watch the first two videos that I've made today about the comments and illustration of the logic of being and the logic of essence, so that I don't need to repeat myself about the ontological status of Hegel's logic. But one could say that it is a process which begins, one might say, by seeking to find something, a determination within pure nothing, which is pure being. And this urge, this will, I guess, this impulse, is that which gives birth to logical necessity. And because every category is insufficient and is contradictory, the logical process is forced to move forward, I guess, which is an attempt to retrogress, to return to the primordial emptiness, which was unstable. So that's the idea that going forward is going backward in Hegel's logic. And I have not thoroughly studied the logic of the concept because it's quite complex. But my purpose is not to say that Hegel's logic is true, but to check whether or not it is true. And if indeed it is true, it must be the foundation of all forms of logic, all forms of truth, all forms of reasoning, all mathematics, all knowledge, and even the foundation of nature. Because to comment briefly, the logic of the concept contains the classical logic, but in a transcended form, because what Hegel calls concept is not an intellectual determination as we understand what a concept is or a notion. It is a thinking totality which includes within itself a unity of opposite determinations. And to be honest, I don't yet know what is the difference between what he calls reason and what he calls the concept, because the concept is one with the world confronting it or confronting him, and he is the rational connection between the thinking mind and the being of the world. So yeah. So Hegel accuses Kant and traditional classical logic of being irrational and empirical, because the old-fashioned, old-school logic gathered the determinations of thought and the rules and the laws of thinking without deducing them organically. And Hegel's logic is an attempt to be the foundation of logic by a process of self-movement. And yeah, and it contains all the correct, the true modes of reasoning and thinking. And what is not yet clear to me, but hopefully the process of the self-development of being becoming conscious of itself will confirm or negate whether or not mechanism, chemism, and teleology arise from within the self-movement of thought, and whether or not mechanics, chemistry, organic life, and teleology and purpose, that which we find in nature and in the realm of spirit, have their ground, their foundation, their truth in the purely thinking totality that Hegel calls the idea. And the idea is not just an idea, it's the totality, the organic but non-natural, the thinking organic totality, which contains within itself all the laws and determinations of thought, all the categories of our mind. And it's a self-created, self-moving process of which we are an image. And by understanding ourselves, we can become one with this idea, which is the mind of God. And this idea is one with the world, because the world is the alienation, the reflection of the idea, and that's the reason why nature is rational. And yeah, I will not comment more because I am not yet familiar with this part of logic, but I would like to comment the chapter 4 of Evola's doctrine of awakening about Buddhism, what he calls the destruction of the demon of dialectics. And I will put a link to a song which I have already linked in a previous video, Hot and Cold by Katy Perry. And this video is a culturally Hegelian video because it mixes modern pop culture in the form of a song by Katy Perry, Evola's teachings, and Hegel's logic. And in order to understand the free aspects, the free moments must be grasped in their unity. And here's what Evola says about dialectics. The premise from which the Buddhist doctrine of awakening starts is the destruction of the demon of dialectics, the renunciation of the various constructions of thought and speculation. Dialectics is considered demonic by the Buddhists because it is the moment of the negative, it is the instability within thought and within being, which forces thought and being to constantly move and to be in a state of restlessness and to never find peace and calm and stability. So the dialectical movement of being, which is the root of all movement in the world of nature as well as spirit, and the dialectical movement within consciousness and within thought, which forces us to constantly have new thoughts and reconsider things, is a state of permanent restlessness. So itself, it is dialectical because the restlessness itself is permanent. And Buddhism and the doctrine of awakening is an attempt to find a appeasement and liberation from this self movement. And the kind of question that the Buddhist asks himself is, do I indeed exist? Or do I not exist? What am I and how am I? This being here, whence has it really come and whither will it go? For the Buddhist, these are vain thoughts, so that the Buddhist does not even question his existence or non-existence. He's beyond these kind of thoughts. And these are the blind alleys of opinions, but what Evola calls opinions are opinions in the sense that they are not the absolute truth, but Hegel's logic shows that the absolute truth is not a statement or a state of mind. It is the very process, the very dialectical process of unfolding of all the logical categories and all the partial views of what he calls the absolute, and only the totality of all the movement is the truth. So what the Buddhist and Evola call opinion are just thoughts which are moments in the self-unfolding process of truth. I am is an opinion, I am this is an opinion, I shall be is an opinion. He who has overcome all opinion, all disciples, is called a saint, one who knows. So he who has transcended the dialectical process of constant self-movement becomes a saint, a knower. And the kind of question that, the kind of assertions that can be asserted or denied is, the world is eternal, the world is not eternal. The world is finite, the world is infinite. The life principle and the body are the same. The life principle is one thing, the body another. The accomplished one is after death. The accomplished one is not after death. The accomplished one both is and is not after death. So these kind of contradictory statements is what Kant, in the Critique of Pure Reason, showed to be true about what he calls the antinomies or the dialectical contradiction of reason, when reason seeks to determine whether the world is finite or infinite, whether there is a cause of the world, or whether the world exists out of necessity, whether the soul is immaterial or mortal or immortal. Reason stumbles into contradictions, and Hegel says that Kant found four antinomies, dialectical contradiction of reason, but Hegel showed that every concept, not just the concept of the world or the soul or the or time, as envisioned by Kant, are contradictory, but all categories of logic are contradictory, and what Hegel calls the logic is nothing but this self-unfolding process of trying to solve the contradiction by differentiating opinions, which are ideas in the sense of normal ideas, differentiating them and then reuniting them. So this is the demon of dialectics. This is the negative which is present within thought. And he talks about a labyrinth of opinions, painful, desperate, tortuous, not leading to detachment, not leading to progress, not leading to vision, not leading to awakening, not leading to extinction. But actually it does, because Hegel says that the negative of a point of view of consciousness, or the negative of a category, is not pure nothing, but it is the negative from that which it comes from. So it's a determinate negative, so it has the negation of its previous thought within itself, and in this sense, thought and consciousness are always progressing, because they are always reconsidering their past experiences and thinking them through, and rethinking and reshaping their experience of the world. So yeah. He says, to know by seeing, to become cognition. See, that's important. To become truth, to become vision. This is the ideal. Knowing, seeing in conformity to reality. But what Hegel calls the idea, or even the concept, is the unity of the subject and the object. It is the knower, the known, and the process of knowing which become one. This is what we call mystical, but what Hegel calls speculative. It is precisely this abolition of the distinction between the subject and the object. So by contradicting dialectical logic, Evola and the Buddhists are confirming speculative logic. He says that we must leave the state of restlessness and anguish behind, and this is the path of the Ariya, the noble mind, I guess. The supreme form of knowledge is knowledge conforming to reality. But this is precisely what Hegel calls truth. It is when the distinction between the subject and the object, the mind and the world, thought, subjective thought and objective being has been abolished. And Hegel's logic is nothing but this process of being and thought self-differentiating one from the other and re-establishing through a dialectical process of negation and overcoming the negative, re-establishing their original identity. So he is confirming Hegel's logic. And I recommend that you should watch and listen to the song by Katy Perry, because I know myself that I am in the process of understanding that Evola about the doctrine of awakening from the Buddhist, Hegel's logic, and modern pop culture in the form of Katy Perry are one. They are three modes of one truth expressed in the same fashion. So this, I am in the core of cultural Hegelianism. And yeah. He says that true excellence means conforming with the Ariya, quality of knowledge. This recalls the qualities of the Nous, of the Olympian mind, a mind that, according to the most ancient Aryo-Hellenic tradition, is strictly related to being, and that is manifested in a knowledge by seeing. The Nous is proof against deception, is firm and tranquil as a mirror. It discovers everything without seeking, or rather everything discovers itself in it. Whereas the Titanic spirit is restless, inventive, and always in search of something, cunning and curious. So there's a conflict within the mind and the psyche, I guess, between this superhuman kind of knowledge, this intellectual intuition that we find in Spinoza, what he calls the third kind of knowledge, the intellectual intuition that we find in Schelling, and the speculative knowledge that we find in Hegel. They are modes of apprehending the truth by becoming one with the object, by letting the object and the being of the object penetrate the mind, and the mind penetrate the object, and to become knowledge. Yeah. He says that the formula of the Buddhist doctrine of awakening is conformity with truth or with reality. It's to become the eye of the world, to become I, or to become knowledge of the awakened ones. So the purpose of cultural Hegelianism is to help by the ability that music or art has to speak directly to the soul, and to make the soul vibrate, to elevate its faculty of grasping to a higher level, to speak in a poetic fashion to the soul, so that it might be elevated. And then by adding the teachings of Evola and mysticism to incorporate the view of religion and representation, and to bring about in unity with that the conceptual knowledge of Hegel's philosophy. And the three must become one eventually. And if I am successful, which I kind of doubt, I will be able to awaken myself with this video, and at least some others who will understand the profound unity of the very core of being, which is beyond time, which is a process of eternally knowing oneself to be one with the divine through a process of cognition. And hopefully my videos will be successful one day, because, to be honest, I believe that cultural Hegelianism is a great idea. And as a notion deepens gradually, declines gradually, shelves gradually without sudden precipices, so in this law and discipline there is a gradual training, a gradual action, a gradual unfolding, and no sudden apprehension of supreme knowledge. Gradual is a determination of measure. It's a unity of quantity and quality, and the process of thought becoming conscious of itself as being, and becoming being thought, and the two becoming one, is a gradual process of unfolding. It's a progress in the complexity of thought, and a regression towards the source, which is the unity. So here again, Hegel explains in more conceptual ways what the Buddhists and Evola claim. One cannot, I say, attain supreme knowledge all at once. Only by a gradual training, a gradual action, a gradual unfolding does one attain perfect knowledge. This is the patience and the suffering and the work and the seriousness of the negative, as Hegel says. He says that the awakened recognize the existence of a reality superior to that of the senses. I am trying to promote, in my best moments, a view of reality which is for the soul, for the mind, and for the spirit, which are above the sensuous impressions of the world. And then he mentions in the opposing theories regarding the world and regarding man, characteristically reminiscent of the Kantian antinomies, either one opposite or the other might be true. And Hegel's logic is a complete reworking of the antinomies of Kantian reason, which were dialectically contradictory, but to apply this to all the categories that we think. And Hegel shows that all the categories and thought determinations that we use in order to think our experience of the world, and as human beings we cannot help but think when we are plunged into the world, that they are all partial, and they all consist in flowing one through the other and negating one another and coming back into a higher unity. That's the process of abstraction, negation, concrete unity. And the concrete unity itself is the abstraction of its own negation, which includes a higher, more incorporated, wealthier form of understanding. And I read in a book the idea that all the the definition of the absolute that we have. They are provisional, they are partial, they are limited. And the absolute is the totality of all the partial views of reality that one can have. And it is only this process. And and I would like to conclude by saying that the fact that Kylie Minogue, because I've listened to her a lot today, I was inspired by this song, and Katy Perry, the fact that they came out of nothing, out of the mind of God, out of a logical process, this is absolutely amazing. And I am so amazed that I am left speechless. And when I understand God, I find God so amazing, so brilliant, so magical, so wonderful, that I want to share what I think I understand about God with others. And right now it's a failure because I struggle to convince anyone, but this process of creating not just something random, but creating something amazing and smart and infinitely intelligent out of nothing, honestly, I don't know what is going to happen. I know that I will suffer because I am the negative, and when I think about it, it kind of makes me hopeless and depressive. But I don't know if I will be able to share my view of God with others, and if they will recognize themselves as being moments of God, and if the knowledge will be able to increase and to be shared and to be... I don't know what is going to happen. But when I understand God in his intellectual and creative process, I am absolutely amazed. This is amazing, amazing, amazing. So yeah.